Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk to you about comparison and all of the ways that you compare yourself to others. I know you do it because I do it too. And I want to especially talk to you and explore two most detrimental ways in which you compare yourself to others, and those two ways, how they tend to affect you and affect your transition. Now, a lot of you are going to be familiar with those two ways. Some of you may not be familiar. And if you are familiar, this is just going to drive the point home to make sure we don't compare ourselves to others. So let's talk about comparison. What am I talking about today? I'm talking about all of you, a lot of you, at least who are going on social media, especially because all of these people who are talking about their transition and talking about especially their transition process, their transition timeline, where is it at in their transition, all of the prognosis of their transition. People are doing it via social media. So there's the good thing about social media, right? Because you're all able to get information such as this, and I'm able to share information such as this. But yet there's also a downside to social media. And the downside is when we go down the rabbit hole of oversaturating ourselves with the content and oversaturating yourself with the content of other people and their process and where they're at in the process, to the point where you're starting to really compare their process to your process and analyzing where you're at in transition. And here's the thing about the comparison, and here's the thing, especially with the social media. You really have to ask yourself, who are the people out there putting out the content, right? So there's a lot of people out there who share their process of transition because they genuinely want to share it. But by far and large, people who share very transparently their transition, whether it's on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, on any other platforms, especially when they do a lot of before and after pictures, a lot of them tend to fall into a group of individuals who are younger. Also, a lot of them tend to fall into a group of individuals who are really just want to showcase and want to show how amazing their end result has been. In other words, it's oftentimes this overly dramatized, overly top positive things, which are, I'm sure, absolutely true for those folks, and maybe sometimes even very exaggerated with high technology, such as, I'm using the high definition cameras that is making me look very contrasted. Some of you even commented that, I'm suddenly looking amazing. It's all because of the lighting and the camera and the tools I'm using. In reality, I probably look less of this graphic and more human, more normal, more natural. So you have to remember all of that. People who are sharing there on social media, they're sharing because they want to also insulate themselves with all of the positivity and the feedback they're getting. How often, ask yourself, do you see people who share very realistic transition online? How often do you see people realistically talking about their challenges and their struggles? What about people talking about how incredibly challenging and difficult it is for them? And the reason why people don't often share those things, because, well, the reality is that a lot of people don't want to hear negatives. They don't want to hear how difficult it is. Everybody wants to get lost in this fantasy of, somebody started off looking like this, and now they look like a supermodel. And now they look so thin and they look so pretty, or they look so buff and so muscular, and they had their top surgery. You can't even see the scars. We all want to believe the transition is going to be like that. And all of you, I know, also wish and want to really believe that it's going to have that outcome for you. That's normal, right? That's just part of being human. I know this for a fact because, so I love certain things. I just recently bought myself a new planner. I'm a huge planner nerd and dork. And now I'm obsessing watching planner reviews, and my planner hasn't arrived yet. And I already have this huge expectations because I compared and watched so many YouTube videos. I have this huge expectation this is going to be the holy grail of planners for me. I'm going to be so in love with it. It's going to be the planner for me. It's going to revel. In other words, I'm feeding myself all these expectations, and you're feeding yourself those expectations too. This is one of the major downfalls when we compare ourselves or compare things we're about to receive. In your case, it's going to be comparing transition process. You get into this fantasy land where you start to really believe to the point where it's very, very far from reality. Here's the thing. It's okay to watch all of those things on social media because it's also encouraging. It's also giving a lot of you hope. It's also giving you a lot of confidence to move forward. And that's great. And that's very, very important. But it's also important to know when to stop. It's also important when to realize that you're at a point where you're so saturated with that content that now you're starting to compare where you're at to where they're at. Where you at in your process of transition versus where they're at in transition. Another mistake people make is that they plan their surgeries. And let's say you live in a small city. Let's say you live, I don't know, Wyoming, Idaho comes to mind somehow. You live in one of the smaller states and you want to get facial feminization surgery. And I know for a fact that those states don't have huge prominent surgeons like they have here in California. So you're going to go to a lesser, perhaps prominent, lesser, maybe even skilled surgeon due to logistics where you're at and your circumstances. Does it mean your surgeon is going to be terrible? No, it doesn't mean that. But what I'm trying to say is that by watching a YouTuber who is planning to have surgery done with like Shams Braley here in California or Kyle Kiojamba or any of the other prominent facial surgeons, or maybe they're traveling to Spain to go to amazing facial team, and they had the surgery and they had this fantastic results and they're flaunting those results, and you're watching it and you're thinking, this is how my FFS is going to go. I'm going to get the same results. You're building those unrealistic expectations and you're not rooting yourself in the reality, in the circumstances that you're at. This is one of the biggest downfalls and one of the biggest mistakes of comparing. So when you're watching the content out there, you have to constantly keep, it's almost where you're at, the realities that you're watching, and then you have to put in a padding in between. Padding in between is going to be your gap. It's going to be that reality check between what you're watching and where you're at, right? It's going to be that contrast. It's going to be something that keeps you grounded. It's almost your anchor to keep yourself grounded in your circumstances. And that's super, super, super crucial, because otherwise you're going to expand like a balloon. And because you're going to expand like a balloon, you're going to float. When you float, your expectations get all over the place. So let me get to it. Here are two most common issues that I see constantly that arise when people start comparing themselves over and over again to people who are out there. Here's the two most, I would say, prominent issues that I see consistently happening to folks. Number one, when you compare yourself to other people's transition progress, to other people's outcome, to how the hormones have affected them, to also how the surgeries have affected them, to how maybe good they had it, to how lucky they had it. When you look at their end results and you start comparing your end results and you're starting to think that your results hopefully is going to be just like that, what you're really doing again is you are not rooting yourself in reality. You are moving further away from your circumstances and further away from your plane of existence. Now, why is it so bad and potentially dangerous to move away from your plane of existence? Because you have to be aware and you have to also accept your circumstances and where you're at. How old are you? How long you've been under influence of hormone that, I almost want to say natal hormone, if there's such thing. How old you are, where you live right now, what are your circumstances, what is your financial situation, which is your access to all of those things, how long you've been going through transition. All of those things are going to play an effect. And when you are not considering any of those things and you're just looking at an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old YouTuber who is showcasing their process and how amazing they look, and you are really hoping that this is going to be you're really setting yourself for a very painful downfall. The downfall that happens when suddenly the reality happens and suddenly you realize that what you've been envisioning is not even within the scope of your reality. You have to acknowledge, it's very, very important for all of you to acknowledge who you are, where you're at, and take your circumstances and who you are, just everything about you into consideration. No two people have exactly the same transition. Transition is going to look very different for everybody else. Even FFS or facial masculization surgery, any of the gender-affirming surgeries are going to have different outcomes for everybody else because it's going to vary on so many other elements. It is as if I am comparing myself to other therapists, gender therapists, and constantly aspiring to be somebody else. The more I will do that, the further I will take myself away from who I am really at the core. One of you recently commented and said, Dr. C, I really like your no bullshit straight, no shitting around, something to that extent approach. Well, yes, the reason why a lot of you like it is because I have direct personality, and it comes through because I'm staying true to who I am. If I pretended to be a therapist or copied myself after some other therapists who are out there on social media and tried to also maybe pay attention to how I speak, never curse, which a lot of you know I do, not be so direct, I don't even know. A lot of you probably won't resonate because it won't feel authentic. So it's important for you also to consider you as you, to consider and to acknowledge that your transition is going to be yours. It's not going to be theirs. It's not going to be anybody else's. It's going to be yours. It's going to belong to you, and it's going to look within the scope of your reality, within the scope of your circumstances, and that's okay. So you need to be able to acknowledge that. You need to be able to give that to yourself. Otherwise, you're constantly chasing something that has not existed. And chasing that ball, chasing that, which is inevitable, is only, again, going down. It's just going to take you down the spiral you don't want to go to. There's only you. There's no other replica of you. There's no other you. There's only you. And how you're going to come out on the other end is whatever work you're going to put into it. But you have to honor that. You have to laugh and you have to honor that. You have to honor your own uniqueness. I know a lot of us hate that language, that lingo of we're all unique, we're all unusual, we're all different. But the truth is we are. We are. This is why I don't believe in competition. This is why I don't compete with anybody in my business. Why? Not because nobody else can't be an amazing gender therapist. Of course they can. That's not the point. The point is nobody's going to be able to do what I do the way I do. Nobody will ever talk the way I talk because there's only one me. There's no other net out there. There's no, unless there's the twins that exist that I don't know of, there's nobody else who's me and there's nobody else who's you. So your transition is going to be beautiful and it's going to be in proximity to your reality. Acknowledge that, accept it, and love that, and embrace that. And the minute you do, things will start getting easier for you versus, again, chasing somebody else's lifestyle, chasing somebody else's reality. I don't even know why people sometimes do that. Why do we do that? That is just a painful way of existing. So remember, it all starts with awareness of your circumstances and also acknowledging and being okay with your circumstances. The second downfall that I see that happen when a lot of you compare yourself to everybody else out there on social media in regards to your transition, in regards to your surgeries, in regards to your potential outcome is this. People develop pretty severe and pretty drastic depressions when things turn out how they envisioned. All of those things that we envisioned, all of those things that we tend to kind of compartmentalize in our headspace, thinking that this is how things are going to be for me. I'm going to start transition. I'm going to be just like this amazing YouTuber. I'm going to look beautiful and spectacular. And this 20-year-old didn't even need any surgeries. And this 20-year-old, all they needed was hormones to look so spectacular. And that's exactly how I'm going to be while I'm here, maybe 60 years old and had 60 years of testosterone raging through my body, or, whatever else your circumstances. That's not realistic. And when that doesn't pan out, people get really crushed. We all get crushed when our expectations don't pan out. But we all have to acknowledge we are responsible for those expectations. We are responsible for setting up those things. And when we set those expectations that are not anchored in here and now, but they're anchored in that YouTuber, they're anchored in their reality, and then we get upset when ours turn out the way it turned out for that YouTuber, well, that's really also us not taking responsibility. So it's really, really important because you have potentially you're putting yourself in a position where you can get really hit with depression, and depression to the point where it's going to suck any hopefulness out of your transition. I've seen it a lot of times. I've seen it where people get so upset because they had this crazy expectations of how transition is going to work out for them. Or a lot of people had expectation that once they transition, their life is suddenly going to be incredibly happy and have this 360-degree turn. And while there's drastic changes, life goes on, and now you have to live your life, and you have to also make your life for yourself. And it's not like suddenly transition is going to make everything beautiful and bloomy. It sure makes a lot of things easier in your life, and it's going to make you definitely much more happier person. There's still a lot of things that you're going to need to work on. And I've seen people where the expectations don't pan out and how crushed they get. And I've seen how depressed they get. And the worst case is not even depression, which is manageable. The worst case is when people start losing hope. And then people start losing hope and start telling themselves, well, I didn't turn out to be like those amazing, beautiful YouTubers. Look at me. And then they start feeding themselves all those negative self-talk. And then they start telling themselves, nobody will love me, nobody will want me. And before you know it, things become self-fulfilling prophecy. So comparison is a fool's game. Comparison is like drinking well of poison. It's not good, it's not helpful, and I really, really don't recommend it. So recognize it, stop it, root yourself into this reality, anchor yourself into this reality, and I promise you things are going to turn out better for you, because then you're going to have more realistic outcomes. You're not going to have these crazy aspirations. It's great to have goals, and it's great to wish for bigger things in your life, but they also have to be within the scope of your reality. You can't just be so far off as a floating balloon. So comment below, let me know, how have you compared or continue to compare yourself to others? How did that affect your transition? How did that affect your transition goals? A lot of times it's important to take a break from social media. If you notice yourself constantly obsessing and watching particular YouTuber because you're so obsessed with their outcome, thinking that's going to be your outcome, that's a sign to take a break. Take a break, practice self-care, disconnect yourself from social media, spend time with yourself, go inwards, journal, spend time with yourself. Those things are super, super important. So comment below, let me know, are you comparing yourself to others? If so, how is that affecting your transition? And I'll see you all next time. Bye.